Hi, Zainab. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. A retired teacher of 10 years, Kathleen Davis is also a wife, mother of three, and novelist. She obtained her master's degree in elementary education from the University of Florida, and she has devoted her professional life to finding excellent children's literature and sharing it with her students. She thinks that books may be a window into new worlds and a tool to fundamentally alter one's viewpoint, in addition to being a wealth of knowledge. Brave, her first book, was based on her children's fears at night. They were not sleeping well and were waking her up through the night. She could not find a book that was age appropriate, did not create more fears in children, and reinforced that they were safe and loved. 6 months later, her book was self published. Feathers from Above was another book inspired by Kathleen's children. Kathleen wants to inspire children to be courageous, remember that they are loved, and keep in mind that God is with them in both good and bad circumstances. Hi, welcome to Studimation.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and to talk with you.
Thank you so much for joining in today. Are you excited for the interview?
I am. I have been looking forward to it actually all day. I usually am the one who is interviewing authors and educators. And so I'm so happy to not be the one in the hot seat and I can just answer questions instead of having to be thinking about the next thing that we need to talk about. So good luck to you.
Thank you.
You're
Your,
welcome.
your first published book, Brave, was inspired by your children's fears at night. Tell us more about it and why you decided to write your own book.
So, yeah, my son, I was a teacher, and so I really focused a lot on the ELA part of it, the reading and writing when I was a teacher. And so when my son started to have nighttime fears, I went immediately to books because that's what I was comfortable with. And I could not seem to find a book that would comfort him and make him feel empowered and recognize his fears, but not make his fears worse. And so I decided I could write a book that would make him feel strong and safe. And in the end, remember that God is with him. So that is kind of how Brave came to be.
The way you decide to take things in your own hands and publish a book to affirm the fears that most children face at night is just so fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really fun. And actually, I think the book was inside of me all along because when I went to sit down to write it, it took me 10 minutes to write the whole thing. And of course, after that, there's lots of editing and, different copies of it, but the initial thing just came right out. So I think it just needed to be out there.
That's so cool. You couldn't find the perfect book for your children struggling to sleep at night. What do you think a good children's book should include?
I think that a good children's book should have good language. So when I wrote Brave, it's rhyming. So I purposefully made it rhyming because of the age group, because I wanted it for 2 to 5 year olds. And I know that rhyming prose works best with their age. But I also wanted good language, good words in there, words that were above that age range of maybe 2 to 5. That way you could spark conversation and discuss those words while you're reading aloud these books at night. Um, I think books most certainly need to be inclusive and have characters that look like the readers and not just characters that look like me. So my daughter has a big giant blonde afro, and most people actually think she is mixed. And so I thought, well, we're going to go off of that and we're going to make her not necessarily white or black. And then my son, we're going to kind of make him a sort of different shade too. But I think it's important most importantly with books is the illustrations, that they really need to be spot on. And I think my illustrator did a really great job, especially because this book is a night book. It's kind of dark, but the book is so bright and colorful, and it's not dark at all. And it's got a lot of bold images that I think small kids really want to see.
That's a very good advice.
Thank you.
In August, you and your family moved from Jacksonville, Florida to Franklin, Tennessee due to a work transfer for your husband, and you had your own fears of moving to a new place. Tell us more about this transition and how will you link this to your book, Brave?
Yeah, so that was tough because I was born and raised in Naples, Florida, and then we moved to Jacksonville. So I've always lived in Florida and I've always had sunshine and beautiful weather. And so moving here was difficult. It still is. It's still difficult. We've lived here for about a year and a half. Um, and yeah, I think that the verse in my book at the very end of my book, the very last two pages have one is a mantra that says, I am brave, I am safe, I am loved, I am brave. And the other side has a Bible verse that says, do not fear, for I am with you. And the I referring to God from Isaiah. And that's kind of a Bible verse that everybody can believe and stick to, no matter what you believe in. You know, that you're not alone and that God is with you and we don't have to be afraid because there is somebody else who is walking this road with you and has their eye on you. So that definitely has helped me with this and with all of the struggles in life that we
Your
face.
book is conveying some beautiful messages.
I hope so. Thank you. I appreciate it.
500 years ago, feathers were used to constitute culture, artistry, good health, and even courage in battle. What specifically inspired you to write the book Feathers from Above?
So that book was also inspired by my daughter. The other one was my son. This one was my daughter. She would find feathers and say, Mommy, this feather must have fallen from my guardian angel. This look, they must have been near. And you know, we might be outside and she might find another one randomly one day and say, look, my guardian angel must have visited. And I just thought, well, goodness, we all need that reminder that we do have an angel and that God is watching over us and that we're not alone in life. And that's how that one started. And that one actually, again, I was like laying in bed and the idea popped into my head and I just got on my phone and I wrote that probably in 15 minutes again. But that one was a little bit more painstaking, the editing process. I really worked a lot harder on making sure the rhythm and the rhyme and everything was just perfect for that one. So the editing did take me much longer on that one. But yeah, that's kind of how that one came to.
Yes. Feathers are widely believed to signify the connection between the creator, the owner of the feather, and the bird from whom the feather came. As such, feathers are seen as gifts from the sky.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
And that's exactly what your book is conveying.
Yeah, yeah.
Your books, Brave and Feathers from Above, were illustrated by Rekla Celine and Martina Nijman, respectively. How did you discover them and what inspired such joyful illustrations?
So my first book, Brave, I didn't know anything about being an author. I didn't know what I was doing. So I was just begging illustrators because again, I knew the impact of a good illustration. And I did not want it to look computer generated. I did not want it to look like a comic book. I wanted it to be a certain way. So I just began begging illustrators. I also had like a very, very, very small budget because I knew that your returns for an author are teeny tiny, like almost nothing. And so finally I begged this like amazing illustrator who was like, no way, you're crazy. I'm never gonna do it. But she was like, but I have somebody that I know who hasn't done any books, but I think she'd be great for you. And that's how I met Reka. And she actually lived and still does, lives in Bahrain. And so we would just meet like this over Zoom and talk and go through each, stanza with the illustration until it was done. And Martina was similar, except I knew what I was doing for Feathers from Above, at least a little bit more. I shouldn't say I fully know. And this time I actually went on Instagram and looked on different artist forums where they post, amazing and beautiful artists. And I knew that Feathers from Above really needed to be carried through by the illustrations because it did not have strong character development. It's just this beautiful rhyme about how we're not alone and God is with us and bad things happen and we're okay through them. So I really needed these illustrations to just bring it home. And I also wanted the illustrations to carry you through a whole year. So if you look at my book, it goes through winter, spring, summer, fall. It's inclusive. Again, it was very important that it be inclusive, that, you know, it wasn't just like my kids could look at it and see themselves, but you could look at it and see yourself, and anybody. So there's all sorts of different children of different colors and everything in it. And Martina I chose Martina specifically because of the way she did nature and light. And I really wanted the presence of light to be very strong and powerful because it's about angels and it's about God. And I thought nature and light, that needs to be in there. And Martina was the woman for the job.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
she's in Poland. She was in Warsaw,
Wow.
Poland.
Illustrations can have a huge impact on the reader.
Yes.
Going through your website, I came across a blog, Structure in a Very Unstructured World. What made you write about kids needing schedules, predictability, and order?
Yeah, so I feel like, so what I stand for three things basically, is kind of like my go-to. One are like tips for parents to help them. One is to encourage reading and help parents with reading, and help kids read, and, you know, everybody to read more. And then the third is my books, being an author and all of that hard work that I put into that. So that article that I wrote about structure in a very unstructured world was sparked because, like everything in my life, my kids were having very messy areas. And of course, they would go into their things and say, I have nothing to play with. I have no toys. And of course, they have millions of toys everywhere. But, you know, when you have all of these things piled on top of you, it becomes overwhelming. I remember when I was a teacher, it was my first year teaching, and there was a wonderful lady. I was teaching in Tampa and Ybor City, and this lady came in and was like, you have to have structure. Your children thrive in a structured atmosphere. And so if things are unorganized and if things are tidy and if you don't have structure as far as like the way your day is laid out and just every part of your day, then your kids feel that and their actions reflect that, and things become more chaotic. And I found that as a parent, it's also the same, that if things are chaos at home and nothing is where it needs to be, and you don't know when you're going to have dinner and their toys are everywhere, your kids can feel that, and they become more chaotic. So that is kind of how that article idea started.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Your book, Brave, is a perfect bedtime storybook as it diminishes the fear of young children. What do you think is the significance of such bedtime stories?
What do you mean, the significance of such bedtime stories?
Like, what impact does it have on children?
Okay. So it has, I can tell you with my own children, fears don't just go away. You know, they may subside, and your fears may feel not as scary, but we're all afraid of something. I'm afraid of things. I'm constantly, if my husband is gone or whatever, or I hear a noise upstairs and I'm home alone, it's normal to be scared. So I think the power of having this book, and especially the Bible verse and the mantra on the last page, is that it's always something that parents can go to when those fears reoccur, and a reminder for ourselves also. You know, I always say I like to write books that I want to read too, that are short and sweet and we can read them and then go to bed, leave me alone, I want to read a 20-minute story, and that we're interested in as adults. So it's a good reminder for everybody to go back to when those fears reoccur. And, you know, it's Halloween time and the scary commercials are back on the TV and your kid sees it and they're scared again. I can say that probably 99.9% of parents that I've talked to have had this issue of their children being scared, whether they're just spooked here and there, or their kids are sleeping in their bed every single night because they can't sleep at all by themselves. So it seems to be a real issue that most parents will go through, whether it's long term or whether it's a day. It seems like something we're all going to go through.
Have you read your book to your students?
Well, I no longer am a teacher, but I have read it to my three little students that are out there. They get it all the time. Yes. And even though I'm not a teacher, I do tons of school visits. I actually have a school visit tomorrow in Nashville.
Wow.
And then I get to read the book on repeat. I'll probably read it tomorrow 12 times as each different group comes in. And it's wonderful. And I love reading it to the kids, and I love seeing their reactions. And I love seeing their reactions to the illustrations and seeing themselves in the book too. So,
What's the reactions like?
well, particularly Feathers from Above, there was this child about 2 weeks ago when I was doing a school visit, an author visit, and she was mixed and she looked just like my daughter. Oh my gosh. She had like olive skin and bright blonde hair. And she was in kindergarten and she pointed to the picture and was like, "It's me." And I mean, I will never forget it because it really did look like her. And I'm sure that it meant something to her to be able to see a person in a book that actually looks like her, that you don't really get to see this in other books, or a lot. There are in other books, but not as many books as there should be. So
These are the moments that bring happiness as an author.
yeah, 100%.
Would you like to share any of your childhood memories?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. Um, there's nothing that strikes me right off the bat. I can say that I wasn't I wasn't read to as a child. My parents both worked. I don't know if it's, I was talking to somebody today. I don't know if it's because we were Italian and it's just not culturally wasn't ingrained in my parents from their grandparents who were immigrants. Reading wasn't very strong in my home, but I still became a great reader, and now I would say hopefully a good writer, an okay writer. um, and so I think it's never too late. And also, if you're a parent and you're listening to this and you're like, I never read to my kid, it's also never too late to start that too, because it's super impactful. It's the most important thing you can do to help your child become a better reader and love to read and write together at the same time. And it's such an easy thing we can do as parents that takes 5 minutes just to read a book and be interested in something your kids are interested in, be interested in that genre that they care about. So yeah.
Absolutely. In what positive ways do you think parents can deal with the fears of their children?
So fears are real, like I said, and I think the first thing we can do would be to not dismiss the fears and tell them there's nothing to be afraid of, just go to sleep. There's nothing to be scared of. Because again, we're all scared. And these little guys that have only been alive for 2 years and 3 years and 4 years are experiencing something that's scary and they don't want to be left alone. And that doesn't mean we need to stay in there and sit in there. But I would say don't dismiss it. And I would say try to establish a good nighttime routine. Things that bring joy and happiness. So number one, getting off of the devices and things like that. Reading books out loud. And prayers. I mean, we are a faith-based family, so prayers I think are in our family the most powerful way that we can try to reflect on our day and reflect on, or I guess, look forward to the next day, and just kind of set the tone for both of those things. But yeah, I would say reading aloud and having a good routine, prayers, and being there for your kids. I mean, if they're scared, just comfort them. That's all we can do. That's all we can do as parents.
Thank you for such a great advice.
You're welcome.
Learning to be brave is what your book Brave is all about. Fears are something everyone has regardless of age, especially after COVID. Stress and depression because of such fears increased rapidly. What advice would you give to people struggling to overcome their fears?
Oh gosh, I would say it's like any habit. You just have to start. So it's like flossing your teeth at night. Nobody really wants to floss their teeth every single night. But once you start, then you're going to do it. Or exercising. Nobody really wants to exercise every single day. But once you start, you do it and you get it over with. So I would say for people who are trying to overcome their fears, start. Try whatever that fear is. For me, gosh, when I was going to write Brave, that was a huge fear. I had it written for probably 2 or 3 months before I told anybody, not even my husband, because I was afraid that people were going to laugh at me. I was afraid people were going to say, "What are you doing? Why would you want to write a book? You have 2 kids. You've already taught for 10 years. You don't need, that's ridiculous. You're not going to get anywhere with that." And I still feel that as now. And then, you know, life is scary, but if there are things you want to accomplish, if there are things you want to do, I would say you just need to start. Start small and look in research and make to-do lists and check them off, but start. That's the hardest step. Just start.
Thank you again for such a great advice.
Thank you. And like you, my gosh, hosting this amazing podcast.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome.
Before we end our interview, please share where we can find your books.
So you can find both Brave and Feathers from Above on Amazon. But if you would like a signed copy mailed to you, I have them on my website, and there's actually also no shipping cost. So it costs the same as it is on Amazon if you're a Prime member, like everyone in the world. And I will send you a signed copy. And my website is KathleenDavisBooks.com. Oh, and if you're in the Nashville or Franklin area, think I am in literally every single toy store or bookstore here. So you can just pick it up here.
Awesome. With this, we end our chat. Thank you so much for joining in. It was fun talking to you.
Thank you so much. You did an amazing job as a host. This was like the best interview I've ever had. You're wonderful.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.